He grabbed his wife's arm and dragged her toward the door. Blood was seeping through her hospital gown from the C-section stitches that had torn open. "Marcus, stop. I'm bleeding." He didn't stop. Marcus Thompson looked at his wife holding their 2-day-old son, looked at the snow swirling outside and said 5 words that would haunt him forever. "Get out. Take the bastard with you." He shoved her onto the frozen porch, believing he was finally free. But Marcus had no idea that in exactly 24 hours, the bleeding, shivering woman he had just thrown into the snow would become the sole owner of the company where he worked. She didn't just survive that night. She came back to bury him. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. "Marcus, please. The baby." Elena's back hit the doorframe hard. The impact sent a shock of pain through her abdomen where the C-section stitches had been holding her together for exactly 47 hours. Marcus didn't let go. His grip tightened on her arm as he dragged her toward the open front door. 6'2" of cold rage, his dark skin gleaming with sweat, despite the freezing air pouring into the house. "I said get out." "I'm bleeding, Marcus, look at me." She was. The warm wetness spreading across her hospital gown wasn't sweat. It was blood. The stitches had torn when he grabbed her, and now her surgical wound was opening like a zipper being pulled apart from the inside. Marcus looked down at the growing red stain on her gown. Then he looked away. Not my problem anymore. He shoved her through the doorway. Elena stumbled backward onto the porch, her bare feet hitting the frozen concrete. The cold was immediate and brutal, like stepping into a freezer. Snow was falling thick and fast, already forming a white carpet on the steps. Behind her, in the infant carrier, she had somehow managed to keep upright. 2-day-old Isaiah began to scream. "Marcus!" Elena grabbed the doorframe, her fingers turning white from cold and pressure. "Look at your son. Look at Isaiah. You're putting your newborn baby out in a snowstorm. What kind of man does that? The kind who's done carrying dead weight." A woman appeared behind Marcus, young, 23, maybe 24. Long braided extensions, perfect makeup. She was wearing a silk robe that Elena recognized immediately. It was Elena's robe, the champagne-colored one Marcus had given her for Valentine's Day. "Brianna." Elena whispered the name like a curse. She knew this woman. Brianna was the new accounts coordinator at Southern Freight Logistics, where Marcus worked as a senior manager. Elena had met her at the company Christmas party 2 months ago. Brianna had smiled. Brianna had asked about the pregnancy. Brianna had said she couldn't wait to meet the baby. Now Brianna was standing in Elena's house wearing Elena's robe, pressing herself against Elena's husband. "How long?" Elena's voice cracked. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus wrapped his arm around Brianna's waist. "Long enough. I was in the hospital for 3 days. I was giving birth to your child, and you were here with her. You were busy. I was bored." The cruelty of it hit Elena like a physical blow. She had spent 36 hours in labor. She had been cut open on an operating table. She had nearly died when her blood pressure crashed during the C-section. And while she was fighting for her life and the life of their son Marcus was in their bed with a 23-year-old. 4 years. Elena heard her own voice, distant and strange. "I gave you 4 years. I worked double shifts at the restaurant while you got your MBA. I paid our rent for 2 years. I put my entire life on hold so you could chase your career, and this is what I get." "That's the past, Elena. I'm talking about the future." Marcus checked his watch. Actually checked his watch, like she was a meeting running overtime. "I'm about to be vice president of the Southeast Division, youngest VP in company history, first black VP at Southern Freight. You think I got there by accident? You got there because I sacrificed everything for you. No, I got there because I'm exceptional, and I need a partner who matches that. Look at you." He gestured at her blood-stained gown, her unwashed hair, her swollen body. "You're a mess. You clip coupons. You watch reality TV. You're 31 going on 50. Brianna understands the corporate world. She has ambition. She has drive. She has your baby's room, Elena screamed. We painted that nursery together, Marcus. We picked out the crib together. You cried when we found out it was a boy. Something flickered across Marcus's face. A shadow of something human. His eyes moved to the infant carrier, to the tiny fist visible above the blanket, to the son who carried his blood. Brianna noticed. Her hand tightened on his arm. Baby, we talked about this. Clean break, remember. No looking back. The shadow disappeared from Marcus's face. Whatever humanity had surfaced for that brief moment sank back beneath the ice. The lawyers will handle child support. You'll get your check every month like every other single mother in America. I don't want a check. I want my husband. I want my family. I want you to look at your son and remember what we built together. What we built? Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound. What did you build, Elena? I built a career. I built a reputation. I built a future. You built a grocery list and a collection of stretch marks. Elena felt the words cut deeper than any surgical knife. She had gained 40 pounds during the pregnancy. She knew her body had changed. She had spent the last month of pregnancy feeling like a whale, feeling ugly, feeling undesirable. And Marcus had noticed every pound cataloged, every flaw stored, every imperfection as ammunition for this moment. I had your baby. Her voice was barely a whisper. I grew your son inside my body for 9 months. I was cut open to bring him into this world. And you're throwing us away because I gained weight. I'm throwing you away because you're worthless. You always were. I just didn't see it until I met someone better. Brianna smiled. It was a small, satisfied smile. The smile of a woman who had won. Here's what's going to happen. Marcus pulled a thick envelope from his back pocket and threw it at Elena's feet. It landed in the snow, already dampening. That's $500. It'll get you a motel room for a few nights. After that, you're on your own. On my own, Marcus, I have nowhere to go. My mother is dead. I don't know who my father is. You made me cut off all my friends. You isolated me from everyone. I have nothing. I have no one. Sounds like a personal problem. What about Isaiah? He's your son. He's your blood. Is he? Marcus tilted his head, a cruel smile playing on his lips. You worked at that restaurant for years. All those male customers. All those late nights. How do I know he's really mine? The accusation was so outrageous, so calculated to wound, that Elena couldn't even respond. She had never been unfaithful. She had never even looked at another man. She had loved Marcus completely, blindly, stupidly. That's why I'm not putting my name on the birth certificate. Marcus delivered this information casually, like he was discussing the weather. My lawyer says if I don't sign, I'm not legally the father. No paternity, no custody battles. Clean break. You're abandoning your son. I'm protecting my future. There's a difference. Elena looked past Marcus into the house she had made a home. She could see the kitchen where she had cooked 1,000 meals. The living room where they had watched movies together. The hallway leading to the nursery she had decorated with teddy bears and stars. She could see Brianna's purse on the coffee table. Brianna's shoes by the door. Brianna's presence, already erasing every trace of Elena's existence. You planned this. The realization hit her like ice water. You've been planning this for months. That's why you were so distant during the pregnancy. That's why you didn't come to the ultrasound appointments. That's why you weren't there when I went into labor. I was there. You showed up 4 hours after Isaiah was born. 4 hours I almost died, Marcus. My blood pressure dropped to nothing. The doctors were talking about emergency transfusions, and you were here with her. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. Oh my God. Elena pressed her hand to her mouth. You were hoping I would die. That's why you didn't answer your phone. You were hoping the delivery would kill me. Then you could play the grieving widower and keep the house and the life insurance and... Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm seeing clearly for the first time in 4 years. You're a monster, Marcus. You're a complete monster. I'm a man who knows what he wants. Marcus stepped forward, forcing Elena back onto the porch. She was standing in 2 inches of snow now, her bare feet going numb. And what I want is inside this house. What I don't want is out here. He grabbed the handle of a suitcase that had been waiting just inside the door. He threw it onto the porch, then another suitcase, then a third. They tumbled down the steps and landed in the snow. I packed your things, clothes mostly, some jewelry. Your mother's Bible. I was going to throw it away, but Brianna said that would be petty. How generous of her. She's a generous woman. More generous than you ever were. Isaiah was screaming now, his tiny voice cutting through the cold air. Elena wanted to comfort him, but she couldn't let go of the doorframe. If she let go, she would collapse. The blood loss was making her dizzy. The cold was making her weak. Marcus, please. She hated the begging in her voice, but she had no pride left. Let me stay until the storm passes. Let me stay in the guest room, just one night. Not for me, for Isaiah. He's a newborn. He can't be out in this cold. He could die. Then I guess you better find shelter fast. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Marcus smiled. I'll tell them you threatened me. I'll tell them you tried to attack Brianna. I'll tell them you're suffering from postpartum psychosis and you're a danger to the child. Who do you think they'll believe, a respected corporate executive or a hysterical woman covered in blood? Elena knew he was right. The police would see a calm, well-dressed black man in a nice house and a screaming, bleeding, disheveled woman. They would believe the story Marcus told them. They always did. I'll tell them the truth. The truth is what I say it is. I learned that in business school. Facts don't matter. Narrative matters. And right now my narrative is stronger than yours. Marcus put his hand on the door. Goodbye, Elena. Don't contact me again. All communication goes through my lawyer from now on. Marcus, wait. Please. I love you. Doesn't that mean anything? He paused. For one moment, one terrible moment, Elena thought she saw something human in his eyes. Something like regret. Something like doubt. Then Brianna appeared beside him again, running her fingers down his chest. Baby, it's cold. Close the door. Marcus closed the door. The deadbolt clicked. The porch light went off. Elena stood in the darkness in the snow, bleeding from her surgical wound, holding an infant carrier with a screaming newborn inside. She was alone. So, the first thing Elena did was pick up the envelope of money. Her fingers were already numb, and she dropped it twice before managing to stuff it inside her hospital gown. The second thing she did was check on Isaiah. He was wrapped in a blanket, but it wasn't enough. Not for this cold. She needed to get him inside somewhere. Anywhere. The third thing she did was try to pick up her suitcases. She managed to lift one, but the motion sent a wave of agony through her abdomen. She dropped the suitcase and pressed her hand to the wound. Blood. More blood. She needed help. Elena pulled her phone from the pocket of her gown. The screen was cracked from when Marcus had grabbed her, but it still worked. The battery showed 12%. She dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I need help. I've just been thrown out of my house. I have a newborn baby. I'm bleeding from surgery. I need... Ma'am, is this a domestic dispute? My husband kicked me out. Is anyone in immediate physical danger? I'm standing in the snow. My baby is 2 days old. I'm bleeding. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. If this is a civil matter regarding housing, you need to contact... Elena hung up. She tried the number for the women's shelter. Atlanta Women's Crisis Center. How can I help you? I need help. I have a newborn. My husband kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. I'm so sorry, honey. The voice was kind, but exhausted. We're at capacity. This storm brought everyone in early. I can put you on a waiting list. I don't have time for a waiting list. My baby is going to freeze. Have you tried the Salvation Army on? They close at 6. It's almost 10. I'm sorry. I really am. If you can make it through tonight, call us tomorrow morning. We might have space by then. If I can make it through tonight. Elena repeated the words. They sounded like a death sentence. She hung up. She opened her banking app with fingers that could barely move. The joint savings account showed a balance of $11.42. Marcus had drained it. 4 years of contributions. 4 years of savings. Gone. Her personal account had $73.50. Combined with the $500 in the envelope, she had less than $600 to her name. No job, no home, no family, no friends, and a newborn baby who was going to freeze to death if she didn't find shelter in the next hour. Elena looked at the house one more time. Through the window, she could see movement, shadows. Marcus and Brianna going about their evening, warm and comfortable, while she stood in the snow and bled. She turned away. The bus stop was 5 blocks away. It felt like 5 miles. Every step sent pain shooting through her abdomen. Every breath created a cloud of white mist that hung in the air. Isaiah screamed until his voice gave out, then whimpered, then fell silent in a way that terrified Elena more than the screaming. She reached the bus stop and collapsed onto the metal bench. The plastic shelter blocked some of the wind, but not the cold. Snow was piling up around her feet. Her hospital gown was soaked through with blood and melted snow. She was going to die here. The thought came to her clearly without panic. She was going to sit on this bench and freeze to death, and Isaiah was going to freeze with her, and tomorrow someone would find their bodies, and Marcus would probably act devastated and collect the life insurance and headlights. A car was approaching, slowly, deliberately. Elena tensed. At this hour in this storm, a car slowing down meant danger, predators, people who looked for vulnerable women. She pulled the carrier closer, ready to run, even though she couldn't run, ready to fight, even though she couldn't fight. The car emerged from the curtain of falling snow. It was a Bentley. Black. Gleaming. The kind of car that didn't exist in this neighborhood. The car stopped directly in front of the bus shelter. Elena's hand moved to her phone. 6% battery now. Maybe enough for one 911 call that would accomplish nothing. The rear window rolled down. Mrs. Elena Bennett. Elena froze. She hadn't used her maiden name in 4 years. Who's asking? The car door opened. A man stepped out into the snow. He was older, mid-60s, with silver hair and a posture that suggested military background. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena's car. In his hand, he carried a large black umbrella, which seemed pointless given the snow, but he held it over her anyway. My name is Victor Ashford. I am the senior executor for the estate of Dominic Castellano. Elena stared at him through a haze of pain and cold and blood loss. The name meant nothing. I don't know any Dominic Castellano. You do. Victor's voice was calm, precise, professional, but there was something else underneath, something that might have been sympathy. You have known him your entire life, though you never knew his name. He was the man your mother called the businessman who wanted nothing to do with us. Elena's breath caught. My father. Yes. My father's name was Dominic Castellano. Dominic Michael Castellano, founder and CEO of Castellano Holdings, owner of the largest private investment firm in the Western Hemisphere. Estimated net worth at the time of his death approximately $1.4 billion. Elena laughed. It was a broken sound, the laugh of a woman who had been pushed past every limit. Billion, with a B. With a B. Victor confirmed. And you're telling me this man was my father who abandoned my mother, my father who never contacted me, my father who let me grow up poor and work double shifts and marry a man who just threw me out in the snow. I am telling you he died 4 days ago in Zurich. I am telling you that his last will and testament names you as his sole heir. And I am telling you, Mrs. Bennett, that as of 96 hours ago, you became one of the wealthiest women in America. Elena looked at the snow falling around her. She looked at the blood staining her gown. She looked at her 2-day-old son silent and still in his carrier. This is a joke. It is not. It's a scam. You're going to take me somewhere and... Mrs. Bennet. Victor reached slowly into his jacket. He pulled out a photograph and handed it to her. Elena looked at it. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. The photo showed a man in his late 60s. Silver hair. Sharp features. Dark eyes that Elena recognized because she saw them every time she looked in a mirror. She was looking at her father. He watched you your entire life, Victor said quietly. From a distance, your mother refused his contact, refused his money, refused everything. But he never stopped watching. He paid your mother's hospital bills when she had cancer. He funded your college tuition through a scholarship you thought you had earned. He knew about your marriage. He knew about your pregnancy. He knew, and he never reached out. He tried. He wrote letters. Your husband intercepted them. The world shifted beneath Elena's feet. Marcus knew. Your husband discovered your connection to Dominic Castellano approximately 2 years ago. He intercepted every piece of communication. He knew about the inheritance. He knew it would come to you eventually. He was waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for Dominic to die. Waiting to cash in. But he just threw me out. He just gave away any claim to... Elena stopped. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. He didn't know about the will. He thought there would be a probate process. He thought he could divorce me, then contest the inheritance in court. A reasonable assumption, except that Dominic anticipated such tactics. Victor allowed himself a small, cold smile. The will contains what is called a bad boy clause. If you are married to an unsuitable partner at the time of inheritance, the funds remain in a Swiss trust indefinitely. However, if you are separated from such a partner, the funds release immediately. And by throwing me out tonight, your husband established the legal date of separation. He removed himself from any claim to the Castellano fortune. He gave up $1.4 billion because he couldn't wait one more week to be with his mistress. Elena sat very still. The cold didn't touch her anymore. The pain didn't touch her. She was floating somewhere above it all, looking down at the wreckage of her life and seeing for the first time a path through the debris. Does he know? Does Marcus know what he's done? No, the will has not been made public. As far as the world knows, the Castellano Empire is in limbo, while the lawyers review the estate. As far as your husband knows, you are a homeless woman with nothing. Elena looked back through the snow toward the house she could no longer see, toward the man who had thrown her away like garbage. Good. Her voice was quiet, but there was something new in it. Something hard. Something dangerous. Let's keep it that way. Mrs. Bennet. You said Castellano Holdings owns investment firms. What else? Real estate. Technology patents. Several logistics companies. Which logistics companies? Apex Holdings is the primary subsidiary. Apex owns approximately 30 regional shipping and freight companies across the United States. Does Apex own a company called Southern Freight Logistics? Victor's smile grew wider. It does. The company where my husband works. Where he will continue to work for the next several days, believing he is on the verge of a major promotion. Elena stood up. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. Blood ran down her legs and melted into the snow. She didn't care. Take me somewhere warm. Take care of my son. And then tell me everything about my father's company. Mrs. Bennet, you need medical attention first. I need information. The medical attention can wait. Victor looked at her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face seemed to satisfy him. Your father said you would say something like that. He said the Castellano blood runs thick. Did he also say what I should do to the man who threw his grandson into the snow? He did. Victor opened the back door of the Bentley. Warm air spilled out, carrying the scent of leather and money. He said you should destroy him. Slowly, publicly, completely. He said you should make an example of him. Elena picked up the infant carrier. She walked toward the car, leaving bloody footprints in the snow. Then that's exactly what I'm going to do. She climbed into the Bentley. The door closed behind her. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the bus stop empty. 24 hours ago, Elena had been a pregnant wife, waiting for her husband to answer his phone. 12 hours ago, she had been a new mother, holding her son, believing her family was complete. 2 hours ago, she had been a discarded woman, bleeding in the snow, with nothing but $500 and a broken heart. Now she was heir to a billion-dollar empire. And Marcus Thompson had no idea what was coming for him. The presidential suite at the Four Seasons was larger than the entire house Elena had shared with Marcus. She stood in the doorway, Isaiah's carrier. In one hand, her blood-soaked hospital gown dripping onto the marble floor. A team of people rushed toward her. A doctor, 2 nurses, a woman in a black suit who introduced herself as the hotel manager. "Mrs. Castellano, we've been expecting you. The medical team is ready. Please come this way, Mrs. Castellano." Elena had never heard that name attached to herself before. It felt like wearing someone else's coat. The doctor, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes, took one look at Elena's gown, and her face went pale. "She needs surgery. These stitches have completely torn. How long has she been bleeding?" 2 hours. Victor answered. "Perhaps 3. She should be unconscious by now." She refused to lose consciousness. Victor said it like a simple fact. She had questions that needed answering first. The doctor looked at Elena with something like awe. "Mrs. Castellano, we need to take you to the hospital." "No hospitals." Elena's voice was firm, despite the weakness spreading through her limbs. "He'll look for me at hospitals. He'll try to have me committed." "Mrs. Castellano, can you fix me here?" The doctor hesitated. "I can stabilize you. I can restitch the wound, but you need blood. You need rest. You need—" "Then do it here. Victor, make it happen." Victor nodded once and pulled out his phone. Within 15 minutes, a portable surgical suite had been assembled in the suite's second bedroom. Within 30 minutes, Elena was receiving a blood transfusion while the doctor worked on her abdomen. She stayed awake through all of it. "The wound is clean," the doctor said, finally peeling off her gloves. "I've closed it properly this time, but you need to stay in bed for at least a week. No walking, no lifting, no stress." "Thank you, doctor. I mean it, Mrs. Castellano. Your body has been through severe trauma. If you push yourself, you could tear the stitches again. You could develop an infection. You could die." "I understand." The doctor left. The nurses left. The hotel manager left. Victor remained. He was sitting in an armchair near the window, a tablet in his hands, waiting with the patience of a man who had spent decades waiting for powerful people to be ready for him. "Isaiah," Elena said. "Where is my son?" "In the adjoining suite. A night nurse is with him. He has been fed, changed, and is sleeping comfortably." Elena closed her eyes. For the first time in hours, she felt something loosen in her chest. Her son was safe. Whatever happened next, her son was safe. "Tell me about my father." "What would you like to know?" "Everything." Victor set down his tablet and leaned forward. Dominic Castellano was born in Naples, Italy in 1955. His family was poor. His father was a fisherman. His mother cleaned houses. By the age of 20, Dominic had built his first business, a small shipping company that transported goods between Naples and Rome. A shipping company. Elena opened her eyes. "Like Southern Freight." "Your father never lost his love for logistics, moving things from one place to another. He said it was the purest form of business. You create nothing. You destroy nothing. You simply connect." "How did he end up in America?" "He followed your mother." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "Your mother, Sarah Bennett, was a student in Naples during her junior year abroad. She was 20 years old. Dominic was 25. They met at a cafe near the university. He always said it was the only time in his life he believed in love at first sight." My mother never talked about Italy. Your mother never talked about a lot of things. Victor's voice was gentle but honest. They had a brief, intense relationship. 3 months. Then Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She was scared. She was young. She was Catholic. She went home to America without telling Dominic about the baby. She ran away. She panicked. By the time Dominic tracked her down, you had already been born. He came to America. He showed up at her door. He begged her to marry him. He offered her everything he had. And she said no. She said no. Victor confirmed. She said she didn't want his money. She didn't want his lifestyle. She said she would raise you alone on her own terms. She made him promise never to contact you directly. She said if he truly loved her, he would respect her wishes. Elena stared at the ceiling. Her mother had been a proud woman, stubborn, independent to a fault. She had worked 2 jobs to keep them fed. She had never asked anyone for help. She had never explained why Elena's father was never discussed. Now Elena understood. He kept that promise for 31 years. He watched from a distance. He arranged scholarships. He paid medical bills through anonymous funds. He built an empire and never told his daughter it existed. Why didn't he reach out after my mother died? He tried. Victor's voice hardened slightly. 6 months after Sarah's death, Dominic sent you a letter. It explained everything. His identity, the inheritance, his desire to meet you. I never got any letter. Your husband intercepted it. We discovered this when we searched Marcus Thompson's records. He had been systematically collecting every piece of correspondence from Castellano Holdings for the past 3 years. 3 years. Elena did the math. That's when we got married. Yes. Marcus Thompson knew who you were before he proposed. He researched your background. He discovered the connection to Dominic Castellano. He married you because he believed you were his ticket to a fortune. The betrayal hit Elena with fresh force. She had thought Marcus loved her. She had believed their relationship was built on something real. But from the very beginning, from the very first date, she had been nothing but an investment strategy. Why didn't Dominic do something? Why didn't he warn me? He tried. He sent investigators. He sent lawyers. But Marcus was careful. He never left evidence of his intentions. And Dominic was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of losing you. Victor's voice softened. You were the only family he had. He had no other children, no siblings, no parents. You were his entire legacy. He was terrified that if he pushed too hard, if he exposed Marcus too aggressively, you would hate him for interfering. He decided to wait. He believed that eventually Marcus would reveal his true nature, and when that happened, Dominic would be ready. He waited too long. Yes, he did. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, Atlanta was waking up. The snow had stopped falling. The sky was turning pink with dawn. What happens now? Now, Victor said, picking up his tablet. You learn what you have inherited. He tapped the screen and began reading. Castellano Holdings is a private investment firm with assets totaling approximately $1.4 billion. The company owns stakes in 17 major corporations across 6 continents. Real estate holdings include commercial properties in New York, London, Dubai, and Tokyo. The art collection alone is valued at $90 million. I don't care about art. I didn't think you would. Victor almost smiled. Let me tell you what you do care about. Castellano Holdings owns a subsidiary called Apex Holdings. Apex is a logistics conglomerate that controls shipping, freight, and transportation companies across North America. Southern Freight Logistics. Southern Freight Logistics is one of 32 companies owned by Apex Holdings. It is headquartered in Atlanta. It employs approximately 3,000 people, and it is currently bidding for a major government contract that would make it the primary logistics provider for the Department of Defense in the Southeast region. How much is the contract worth? $400 million over 5 years. Elena sat up slowly, ignoring the pain in her abdomen. And Marcus? Marcus Thompson is the senior manager in charge of the government contract bid. If the bid succeeds, he will be promoted to vice president of operations. If the bid fails, he will likely be terminated. When is the bid presentation? 6 days from now. It will be held at Apex Holdings headquarters in downtown Atlanta. The CEO of Apex, the board of directors, and representatives from the government will all be present. Elena's mind was racing. 6 days. She had 6 days to transform herself from a homeless woman bleeding in the snow to a billionaire walking into a corporate boardroom. Can I attend that meeting? You own the company, Mrs. Castellano. You can do whatever you want. Then I want to be there. But I don't want Marcus to know who I am until the last possible moment. That can be arranged. And I want to know everything about his bid, every number, every projection, every weakness. I will have the files sent to you within the hour. Elena swung her legs over the side of the bed. The room spun. She grabbed the nightstand to steady herself. The doctor said no walking, Victor reminded her. The doctor doesn't know what I've survived. She stood up. Her legs shook, her abdomen burned, but she stayed upright. I need clothes, professional clothes. I need a haircut. I need someone to teach me how to act like a person who belongs in a boardroom. Your father anticipated this. Victor rose and opened a closet that Elena hadn't noticed. Inside hung dozens of suits, dresses, and designer pieces, all in her size. He had a wardrobe prepared for you years ago. He updated it every season. He wanted to be ready. Elena touched the fabric of a white Dior suit. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. He really believed this day would come. He knew Marcus Thompson would eventually show his true nature. He just didn't know when. Victor paused. Mrs. Castellano, there is one more thing. Your father left a video message for you. Would you like to see it? Elena's hand trembled on the suit jacket. A video. Her father's voice. The father she had never known speaking to her from beyond the grave. Yes. Victor handed her the tablet. A video was already queued up on the screen. Elena pressed play. A man appeared. Silver hair, sharp features, dark eyes that Elena recognized as her own. He looked tired. He looked sick, but his voice when he spoke was strong. Elena, my daughter, if you are watching this, I am gone. I have no excuses for my absence in your life. I built an empire, but I failed to build a family. I left you my fortune, but I could not leave you my presence. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't wipe them away. Your mother was the only woman I ever loved. When she sent me away, I respected her wishes because I loved her. But I should have fought harder. I should have been there for you. I should have protected you from the wolves. The man on the screen leaned closer to the camera. I know about Marcus Thompson. I know what he is. I know what he planned to do. My investigators have watched him for years. I have a file on every woman he has touched since your marriage. I have records of every dollar he has hidden. I have evidence of every lie he has told. Elena's grip tightened on the tablet. If you are watching this video, it means Marcus has revealed himself. It means you have been hurt. It means my worst fears have been confirmed. Dominic Castellano's eyes burned with an intensity that Elena had never seen in anyone. Listen to me, daughter. The Castellano blood is not gentle. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We do not turn the other cheek. When someone wounds us, we destroy them. Completely. Publicly. Permanently. He held up a folder thick with papers. In this folder is everything you need to annihilate Marcus Thompson, his affairs, his financial crimes, his lies to his employers. Every skeleton in every closet. Victor will give you this file. Use it however you wish. Dominic's expression softened slightly. But Elena, I want you to know that revenge is not the only option. You can take this money and disappear. You can start a new life somewhere far from Atlanta, far from Marcus, far from everything that has hurt you. You can raise your son in peace and never look back." He paused. "However, if you choose to fight, if you choose to make him pay for what he has done, then fight with everything you have. Do not show mercy. Do not hesitate. Do not stop until he has lost everything he values. That is the Castellano way." The video was almost over. Elena could see that Dominic was struggling to hold back emotion. "I wish I could have met you, Elena. I wish I could have held you when you were born. I wish I could have walked you down the aisle. I wish I could have been there for your son's birth. But I was a coward. I let your mother's wishes and my own fear keep me away." Tears were streaming down his face now. "I love you, daughter. I have loved you since before you were born. And whatever you choose to do with my legacy, I will be proud of you. You have your mother's strength and your father's fire. You will survive this. You will thrive." He smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was warmth in it. "Welcome to the family, Elena Castellano." The screen went black. Elena sat motionless for a long time. The tears had stopped. Something else had taken their place. Something hard. Something cold. Something that felt like armor forming around her heart. "The file?" she said finally. "Give me the file." Victor handed her a thick manila folder. Elena opened it. The first page was a photograph of Marcus and Brianna at a restaurant, their hands intertwined across the table. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 months ago. The second page was a credit card statement showing charges at hotels across Atlanta. Hotels where Marcus had checked in alone and ordered champagne for 2. The third page was a bank statement showing a hidden account in the Cayman Islands with a balance of $47,000. The fourth page was an email Marcus had sent to his lawyer discussing how to hide assets from Elena in anticipation of divorce. There were hundreds more pages, years of betrayal documented in excruciating detail. "Your father's investigators were very thorough," Victor said quietly. Elena closed the folder. 6 days. Yes. Then we have work to do. The next 6 days were the most intense of Elena's life. Victor brought in a team of experts. An image consultant who transformed her appearance from exhausted new mother to corporate powerhouse. A speech coach who taught her how to project authority with her voice. A business analyst who walked her through every aspect of the Castellano empire. Elena learned fast. Years of managing chaos at the restaurant had prepared her for absorbing information under pressure. She had spent her adult life reading people, anticipating needs, solving problems on the fly. The skills translated. "You have good instincts," the business analyst told her on the third day. "Most people in your position would be overwhelmed. You're asking the right questions." "I worked in customer service for 8 years. You learn to cut through nonsense quickly." On the fourth day, Elena received the files on Marcus's government contract bid. She stayed up all night reading them, making notes, identifying weaknesses. "His projections are wrong," she told Victor the next morning. "He's underestimating fuel costs by 12%. He's using subcontractors with labor violation histories. If Southern Freight uses this bid, they won't just lose the contract. They'll face federal investigation." "Do you want me to notify the board?" "No." Elena smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I want Marcus to walk into that boardroom and present those numbers himself. I want him to fail in front of everyone who matters." On the 5th day, Elena held Isaiah for the first time since the night at the bus stop. The night nurse had been taking care of him around the clock. He was healthy. He was growing. He was perfect. "Your daddy threw you away," Elena whispered, holding him against her chest. "He looked at you and saw a burden. But I look at you and see the most important thing in the world." Isaiah made a small sound somewhere between a cough and a sigh. "I'm going to give you everything, baby. Everything your grandfather built. Everything your father tried to steal. It's all going to be yours." She kissed his forehead. "But first, Mommy has to go burn down your daddy's world." On the 6th day, Elena woke before dawn. The white Dior suit was laid out on a chair near the bed. Louboutin heels waited by the door. A hairstylist had shaped her hair into a sharp, powerful bob the day before. She looked at herself in the mirror. 6 days ago, she had been bleeding in the snow, wearing a hospital gown with $500 to her name. Today, she was Elena Castellano, heir to a billion-dollar empire, owner of the company where her husband worked. "Ready?" Victor asked from the doorway. "Yes." The drive to Apex Holdings headquarters took 20 minutes. Elena used the time to review Marcus's file one final time. "His presentation is scheduled for 10 a.m., Victor said. "The board will be assembled. The CEO will be present. Government representatives will be observing. And Marcus doesn't know I'll be there. He knows the new owner of Castellano Holdings will be attending. He does not know your identity. The will has not been made public. As far as Marcus is concerned, he is about to pitch to a stranger." "Perfect." The car pulled into the underground parking garage of Apex Holdings. Victor led Elena through a private entrance and up a service elevator. "The boardroom is on the 40th floor," he said. "I will introduce you as the new majority shareholder. Nothing more. Your full identity will remain concealed until you choose to reveal it. I want him to start his presentation first. I want him to feel confident. I want him to think everything is going his way. As you wish." The elevator opened onto an executive floor of polished marble and glass walls. Elena could see the boardroom at the end of the hall. Through the windows, she could see figures moving around a long table. One of those figures was Marcus. He was wearing a new suit, Italian wool from the look of it. He was laughing at something someone had said, his white teeth flashing, his confidence radiating across the room. 6 days ago, that man had thrown her into the snow. 6 days ago, he had called her worthless. 6 days ago, he had abandoned his son. Today, he had no idea that she owned every inch of the building he was standing in. "Mrs. Castellano," Victor said quietly. "Are you ready?" Elena smoothed the front of her white suit. She adjusted the diamond earrings that had belonged to her father's collection. She took a deep breath. "Let's go." The boardroom fell silent when Elena walked in. 12 faces turned toward her. The CEO of Apex Holdings, 6 board members, 2 government representatives, the head of legal, the head of HR, and Marcus. He was standing at the far end of the table, a presentation clicker in his hand, a smile frozen on his face. He had been in the middle of setting up his laptop. He didn't recognize her. Not yet. Elena had changed too much in 6 days. The woman Marcus had thrown into the snow was exhausted, bleeding, broken, wearing a hospital gown. The woman who walked into the boardroom now was immaculate, powerful, radiating authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor announced, "may I present the new majority shareholder of Castellano Holdings and Apex Holdings. She will be observing today's proceedings." Marcus's smile widened. He stepped forward with his hand extended. "Welcome, ma'am. I'm Marcus Thompson, Senior Manager here at Southern Freight. I'll be presenting our government contract bid today. I'm sure you'll be impressed with what we have to offer." Elena looked at his outstretched hand. She did not take it. "I'm sure I will be," she said. "Please proceed." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Confusion. His hand hung in the air for an awkward moment before he withdrew it. "Of course. Please have a seat." Elena walked to the head of the table. The chair there was empty, the chairman's seat. She sat down. The room went very quiet. The CEO of Apex, a nervous-looking man named Henderson, glanced at Victor with alarm. The chairman's seat was not meant for shareholders. It was a position of ultimate authority. But Victor simply nodded, and no one said a word. Marcus cleared his throat. "Right. Let's begin." He clicked to his first slide. Numbers appeared on the screen. Projections. Charts. Graphs. Elena watched him present with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. He made jokes. He gestured broadly. He spoke about Southern Freight's bright future with the certainty of someone who had never been told no. She waited, She waded through the market analysis. She waded through the competitive positioning. She waded through the 5-year growth projections. And then Marcus clicked to the slide that showed his fuel cost calculations. "Stop," Elena said. The room froze. Marcus looked at her, his smile slipping slightly. "Excuse me?" "Your fuel projections. They're wrong." "With all due respect, ma'am, these numbers have been verified by our financial team." "Your financial team made a 12% error. You're calculating fuel costs based on last year's rates. But the Pacific shipping tariffs increased in January. Your actual fuel costs will be $34 million higher than projected." Marcus's face tightened. "I don't think—" "I'm not finished." Elena's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Your subcontractor list. Rodriguez Shipping. They have 3 active lawsuits for labor violations. If the federal government discovers we're using contractors with that kind of history, we won't just lose the bid. We'll face congressional investigation. Those lawsuits are, and your timeline." Elena stood up, walking slowly toward the screen where Marcus's presentation glowed. "You're promising full operational capacity in 6 months, but you don't have the warehouse infrastructure to support that volume. You would need to lease at least 4 additional facilities which aren't accounted for in your capital expenditure projections." The room was dead silent. It was dead. Marcus's face had gone gray. His hands were shaking slightly on the presentation clicker. "Who are you?" he whispered. Elena stopped directly in front of him, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same cologne she had bought him for their 2nd anniversary. "You don't recognize me, Marcus?" His eyes widened. "That's understandable. The last time you saw me, I was bleeding in the snow. I was begging you not to throw me out. I was asking you to look at your son." "Elena." Her name came out as a gasp. "Hello, husband." The room erupted. Board members were whispering frantically to each other. Henderson looked like he might have a heart attack. The government representatives were exchanging alarmed glances. Marcus stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the projector. "This is impossible. You're homeless. You have nothing. "I have everything, Marcus." Elena's voice was calm, almost gentle. "I have the company you work for. I have the building you're standing in. I have the parking space where you left your car this morning." She stepped closer. He stepped back. "Did you know my father was Dominic Castellano? Did you know when you married me that I was heir to $1 billion? Marcus's face gave him away. The flash of guilt, the flicker of caught. "You did know." Elena nodded slowly. "You knew, and you married me anyway. You thought you could wait it out. You thought you could control me until the money came through. But then Brianna came along, and you got impatient." "Elena, listen. No." The word was sharp enough to draw blood. "You don't get to speak anymore. You had your chance to speak 6 nights ago when I was begging you to let me stay. You chose to throw me out instead. You chose Brianna. You chose your career." She turned to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thompson is fired, effective immediately. Security will escort him from the building." "You can't do this," Marcus shouted. "This is wrongful termination. This is personal revenge. I'll sue you for everything you have. You can try." Elena smiled. It was a cold, terrible smile. "But you should know that I have records of your hidden bank account in the Caymans. I have evidence of every expense report you falsified. I have photographs of every hotel room you booked with company funds for your affairs." The color drained from Marcus's face entirely. "Security," Elena called. 2 large men appeared in the doorway. "Please remove Mr. Thompson from the building, and make sure he returns the company car." The guards moved forward. Marcus looked around wildly, searching for allies, finding none. "Elena, please. We can talk about this. We can work something out." "There's nothing to work out." "What about Isaiah? He's my son. You can't keep me from my son." Elena leaned in close enough that only Marcus could hear what she said next. "You told me Isaiah might not be yours. You told me you weren't signing the birth certificate. You said you wanted a clean break. She straightened up. Consider your wish granted. The guards grabbed Marcus's arms. Elena, don't do this. I made a mistake. I love you. I've always loved you. You threw me into the snow 2 days after I gave birth to your child. Elena's voice didn't waver. You called me worthless. You said I was dead weight. You chose your mistress over your family. She turned her back on him. Get him out of my building. They dragged him away. His screams echoed down the hallway until the elevator doors closed and the 40th floor fell silent. Elena stood at the window looking out at Atlanta's skyline. Her city now. Her empire. Behind her, she could hear the board members murmuring to each other. She could hear Henderson trying to compose himself. She could hear Victor quietly explaining the succession of ownership. But Elena wasn't listening. She was thinking about 6 nights ago. The snow. The blood. The sound of the deadbolt clicking shut. She was thinking about her father, who had loved her from a distance and died before he could tell her himself. She was thinking about Isaiah sleeping peacefully in the Four Seasons suite, unaware that his mother had just destroyed his father's entire life. And she was thinking about what came next. Because firing Marcus was only the beginning. He would fight back. He would sue. He would go to the press. He would try to drag her name through the mud. He would try to take her son. Elena Castellano had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. Marcus didn't go quietly. 3 days after being dragged out of the Apex Holdings boardroom, he walked into the office of Raymond Carter, the most aggressive divorce attorney in Atlanta. Carter was known for destroying wealthy spouses in court. He had a reputation for finding dirt where none existed and manufacturing sympathy where none was deserved. Marcus sat across from Carter's mahogany desk, his hands trembling with rage. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Carter said, tapping a gold pen against his legal pad. "Your wife inherits $1 billion 3 days after you ask her to leave your home." "I didn't ask her to leave. I told her to get out. And you had no knowledge of this inheritance." Marcus hesitated. "I knew her father was wealthy. I didn't know he was that wealthy." Carter's eyes narrowed. He was a shark, and he could smell blood in the water. "So you married her knowing she had a wealthy father. You waited for years. And then you kicked her out right before the inheritance came through." "It wasn't like that." "That's exactly what a jury is going to think it was like, Mr. Thompson." Marcus leaned forward. "I don't care what a jury thinks. I want half of that money. We were married for 4 years. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. I'm entitled to my share. The inheritance was received after separation. That complicates things." "Then uncomplicate them. That's what I'm paying you for." Carter studied his new client for a long moment. Marcus Thompson was desperate angry and clearly not as smart as he thought he was. Those were the best kind of clients. They paid well and followed instructions. "There's another angle we can pursue," Carter said slowly. "Custody." "Custody. You have a son. Isaiah, correct?" "Yes." "If we can establish that you're the more fit parent, we can petition for primary custody. Once we have custody, we have leverage. Your wife will pay anything to get that child back." Marcus's eyes lit up. "I like that. There's just one problem. You kicked her out while she was recovering from surgery. You threw her into a snowstorm with a 2-day-old infant. That's going to look very bad in front of a judge." She was hysterical. She was suffering from postpartum psychosis. I was protecting my son from an unstable mother. Carter smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Now you're thinking like a lawyer, Mr. Thompson. We'll file the paperwork tomorrow. Petition for emergency custody. Claim she's mentally unstable. Claim the sudden wealth has made her erratic and dangerous. Can we freeze her assets? We can try. Billionaires have good lawyers, but so do I." They shook hands. Marcus felt better than he had in days. Elena thought she had won. She thought she could humiliate him and walk away clean. She had no idea what was coming. The court summons arrived at Elena's penthouse suite the following morning. Victor handed her the documents while she was feeding Isaiah. She read them with one hand, the bottle in the other. "He's claiming I'm mentally unstable," Elena said, her voice flat. "He's saying the stress of sudden wealth has made me a danger to my child." His attorney is Raymond Carter, known for aggressive tactics and manufactured narratives. He wants full custody, he wants half my inheritance, and he wants alimony for the years I supposedly held back his career. The claims are absurd. No judge will what, Victor? Elena set down the bottle. Isaiah fussed briefly, then settled. "You told me yourself. Facts don't matter. Narrative matters. Marcus knows how to tell a story. He's been doing it his whole career." "What do you want to do?" Elena looked at the summons again. The court date was set for Friday, 4 days away. "I want to destroy him so completely that no judge, no jury, no court in America will ever take his side again." "Mrs. Castellano, he wants to use my son as a bargaining chip. He wants to threaten my child to get my money." Elena's voice had gone quiet, which was somehow more terrifying than if she had screamed. "That was his mistake. I could have let him walk away. I could have let him disappear into obscurity. But he came after Isaiah." She stood up, cradling her son against her chest. "Call Helen Park. Tell her I need the best family law attorney in Georgia. Then call our media contacts. I want everything ready for Friday." "What are you planning? Marcus wants a war. I'm going to give him one." The courthouse was packed on Friday morning. Word had leaked about the Castellano divorce case. The press had picked up the story. "Billionaire heiress versus cheating husband" was too good a headline to ignore. Reporters lined the hallway outside the courtroom. Cameras flashed every time someone entered or exited. Marcus arrived first, flanked by Raymond Carter and 2 paralegals carrying boxes of documents. He was wearing a neck brace, claiming that the security guards at Apex had injured him when they removed him from the building. "Remember," Carter whispered as they entered the courtroom, "you're the victim here. You're a loving father who was blindsided by a vengeful wife. Keep your voice calm. Keep your expression sad. Let me do the talking." "Got it." They took their seats at the plaintiff's table. Marcus arranged his face into an expression of wounded dignity. The defense table was empty. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Patricia Hawkins, checked her watch. "Is the respondent planning to appear?" Judge Hawkins asked. Carter smiled. "It appears Mrs. Castellano doesn't take these proceedings seriously, Your Honor. Perhaps she believes her money places her above the law." The courtroom doors opened. Elena walked in. She was wearing a simple black dress. No jewelry except her wedding ring, which she had deliberately kept on. Her hair was pulled back in a modest ponytail. She carried Isaiah in her arms, not in a carrier, but cradled against her chest, like any mother would hold her child. She looked exhausted, fragile, human. The reporters in the gallery leaned forward. This was not the power-suited billionaire they had expected. This was a tired young mother holding her baby. Walking beside Elena was Helen Park, a small Korean-American woman with silver-streaked hair and the reputation of being the most formidable family law attorney in the Southeast. Helen had never lost a custody case, not once in 32 years of practice. They took their seats at the defense table. Elena kept Isaiah in her arms. "Thank you for joining us, Mrs. Castellano," Judge Hawkins said dryly. "I apologize for the delay, Your Honor. Isaiah needed to be fed." Carter stood immediately. "Your Honor, the respondent has brought a newborn infant into a court of law. This is highly irregular and clearly designed to manipulate." "Mr. Carter." Judge Hawkins's voice could have frozen water. "The respondent is a nursing mother whose custody of her child is being challenged. She has every right to have her infant with her. Sit down." Carter sat. "Now," the judge continued, "Mr. Carter, you have filed a petition for emergency custody and asset freezing. Please present your case." Carter rose with theatrical gravity. He spent the next 20 minutes painting a picture of Elena as an unstable, vindictive woman who had used her sudden wealth to destroy her husband's career for personal revenge. He described Marcus as a devoted father who had been blindsided by his wife's erratic behavior. He presented the neck brace as evidence of the violence Elena had ordered against him. "Your Honor," Carter concluded, "my client simply wants what's best for his son. He wants to protect Isaiah from a mother who has demonstrated a capacity for cruelty and instability. We ask that you grant emergency custody to Mr. Thompson and freeze Mrs. Castellano's assets pending a full investigation." Judge Hawkins turned to the defense table. "Ms. Park." Helen Park stood slowly. She was a foot shorter than Carter, but somehow she seemed to fill the entire courtroom. "Your Honor, I would like to submit Exhibit A." She handed a USB drive to the bailiff. Carter frowned. "Your Honor, we haven't been given discovery on any." "This evidence was obtained within the last 24 hours, Mr. Carter. It's a matter of public record. I'm sure you won't object to the truth being presented in a court of law." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The bailiff connected the USB drive to the courtroom's display system. A video appeared on the large screens. It was doorbell camera footage. The image showed a front porch covered in snow. The timestamp read, 6 days ago, 9:47 p.m. "What is this?" Carter demanded. "This is what actually happened the night Mr. Thompson claims his wife became unstable." The video played. The courtroom watched in silence as the door opened and Marcus appeared, dragging Elena by the arm. They watched Elena beg to stay. They watched Marcus throw her suitcases into the snow. They watched him throw an envelope of money at her feet. "That's $500. Should get you a motel room for a few nights. Don't come back." The door slammed. The screen went dark. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Carter's face had gone pale. Marcus was gripping the table so hard his knuckles had turned white. "Your Honor," Helen said calmly, "Mr. Thompson claims my client is unstable. But as you can see, she was not the one behaving erratically that night. She was begging for shelter. She was begging for the chance to rest after major surgery. She was begging him to look at his own son." She clicked to the next piece of evidence. "This is a medical report from Dr. Sarah Chen at the Four Seasons Hotel who treated my client that night. Mrs. Castellano's surgical stitches had been torn open when Mr. Thompson physically dragged her to the door. She lost approximately 1 liter of blood. She required emergency treatment and a transfusion. If she had not received medical care within the hour, she would have died." Marcus shifted in his seat. The neck brace suddenly looked very foolish. "Mr. Thompson claims he was protecting his son," Helen continued. "But the video clearly shows a man throwing a 2-day-old infant out into a snowstorm. The temperature that night was 23 degrees. Hypothermia in a newborn can occur within 30 minutes of exposure. Mr. Thompson wasn't protecting Isaiah. He was endangering him." "Objection!" Carter shouted. "This is character assassination." "Overruled," Judge Hawkins said quietly. Her eyes had not left the screen where Marcus's face was frozen in a sneer. "Continue, Ms. Park." "I also have financial records showing that Mr. Thompson drained the joint savings account the morning before he asked my client to leave. He took $47,000 and transferred it to a personal account in the Cayman Islands. He left my client with $11.42. Helen clicked through bank statements, transfer records, account numbers. Additionally, I have expense reports from Southern Freight Logistics showing that Mr. Thompson used company funds to pay for hotel rooms and dinners for himself and his mistress, Ms. Brianna Collins. Total misappropriated funds over an 18-month period, $23,000. More documents appeared on the screen. Receipts, credit card statements, photographs of Marcus and Brianna at restaurants, at hotels, at a spa. The gallery was murmuring now. The reporters were scribbling frantically. "Finally, Your Honor. I have this." Helen held up a piece of paper. "This is an email Mr. Thompson sent to his attorney, Mr. Carter, 3 days ago. In it, he discusses his strategy for the custody battle. I quote, I don't actually want the kid, I just want leverage. If I have custody, she'll pay anything to get him back. I'm thinking 500 million minimum. The courtroom exploded. Reporters were shouting questions. The gallery was in chaos. Marcus had turned a shade of gray that matched the snow outside. Order! Judge Hawkins slammed her gavel. Order in this court! It took several minutes for the room to quiet down. Mr. Carter, the judge said, her voice tight with controlled fury. Did your client actually send that email? Carter looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the floor. Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess to confer with my client. Request denied. Answer the question. I was not aware of the contents of that email until this moment. So your client was using these proceedings as an extortion tactic, and you didn't know? Carter said nothing. Ms. Park, do you have anything else to add? Helen smiled. Just one thing, Your Honor. Regarding Mr. Thompson's claim to marital assets, I would like to clarify the terms of the Castellano inheritance. The will was drafted by Swiss attorneys and includes a separation clause. The inheritance funds are only released if the beneficiary is legally separated from any spouse at the time of Mr. Castellano's death. She let that sink in. Mr. Thompson filed for divorce on the night he threw my client out. He established the legal date of separation himself. By his own actions, he eliminated any claim to the Castellano fortune. The inheritance was received 3 days later after separation. Under Georgia law, Mr. Thompson is entitled to exactly nothing. Marcus stood up suddenly. This is a setup. She planned this. She knew about the money, and she manipulated me into... Sit down, Mr. Thompson, Judge Hawkins commanded. No, I won't sit down. This woman ruined my life. She took everything from me. You threw her into the snow, the judge said coldly. You abandoned your newborn son. You drained her bank accounts. You used company funds to pay for your affairs. And now you're telling me that she ruined your life. I deserve that money. I was married to her for 4 years. And in those 4 years, did you work double shifts to support her education? Did you sacrifice your career so she could advance hers? Did you carry a child in your body for 9 months and nearly die giving birth? Marcus's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. I've heard enough. Judge Hawkins picked up her gavel. Mr. Thompson, your petition for emergency custody is denied. Your petition for asset freezing is denied. Furthermore, I am issuing a temporary restraining order. You are to stay 500 feet away from Mrs. Castellano and the minor child Isaiah at all times. Your Honor, I'm not finished. The judge's eyes were hard. Based on the evidence presented today, including your own statement that you don't actually want the kid, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into possible child endangerment charges. I am also referring the financial evidence to the Georgia State Bar for review of Mr. Carter's conduct in this matter. Carter went pale. Finally, given Mr. Thompson's demonstrated pattern of financial deception, I am ordering a full forensic audit of his finances to determine appropriate alimony payments to Mrs. Castellano for the years she supported his career. Alimony? Marcus shouted. She's a billionaire. And you're a man who threw his wife into the snow because you thought she was worthless. The court finds that you benefited substantially from her support during your marriage and that she is entitled to compensation. Judge Hawkins smiled grimly. I hope your Cayman Islands account has enough to cover it. She slammed the gavel. Court is adjourned. The chaos that followed was immediate. Reporters rushed toward both parties. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. Marcus tried to push through the crowd toward Elena, but 2 bailiffs stepped in front of him. 500 feet, Mr. Thompson, starting now. Elena! Marcus screamed over their shoulders. Elena, this isn't over. You can't do this to me. I'll appeal. I'll take this to the Supreme Court if I have to. Elena didn't look at him. She walked calmly toward the side exit. Isaiah still cradled in her arms. Helen Park clearing a path through the reporters. Mrs. Castellano. Mrs. Castellano, do you have any comment on today's proceedings? Elena paused at the door. She turned to face the cameras. I just want to raise my son in peace. I never wanted any of this. But when someone threatens your child, you do whatever it takes to protect them. She walked out. Behind her, Marcus was still screaming. The story dominated the news for the next week. Every station ran the doorbell camera footage. Every newspaper printed the email about using Isaiah as leverage. Every talk show discussed the snowstorm scandal and debated whether Marcus Thompson was the worst husband in America. Social media was merciless. #SnowstormDad trended for 3 days. Memes of Marcus throwing suitcases into the snow appeared everywhere. His photograph became a symbol of deadbeat fathers and cheating husbands. Brianna Collins, his mistress, gave an exclusive interview to a morning show. She was crying, claiming she had been manipulated by Marcus, that he had told her Elena was abusive and dangerous, that she never would have gotten involved if she had known the truth. He told me Elena was mentally ill. Brianna sobbed into the camera. He told me she was a danger to him and the baby. He told me he was going to divorce her as soon as it was safe. I believed him. I was so stupid. The interview went viral. Brianna was rebranded as another victim of Marcus Thompson's lies. Marcus, meanwhile, had gone into hiding. He was staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, afraid to show his face in public. His bank accounts had been frozen, pending the forensic audit. His law license application he had been planning to take the bar exam next year was under review. His name was toxic. Every company he applied to rejected him. Every apartment he tried to rent turned him down. Every contact from his former life had blocked his number. On the 8th day after the court hearing, Marcus sat alone in his motel room staring at the water-stained ceiling. His phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered. Mr. Thompson, this is Janet Rodriguez with Channel 4 News. We're doing a follow-up piece on the Castellano case. Would you like to tell your side of the story? Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. Yes, he said. I would. The interview aired the following night. Marcus sat across from Janet Rodriguez in the motel room, the neck brace still on his face, a mask of wounded nobility. He had practiced this expression in the mirror for hours. I made mistakes, Marcus said, his voice carefully modulated. I'm not perfect. No one is. But I've been crucified in the press without anyone hearing my side. Your side being, Elena and I had problems for years. The marriage was falling apart long before that night. I shouldn't have asked her to leave during a snowstorm, I admit that. But I was overwhelmed. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. You drained her bank accounts. Those were joint accounts. I contributed to them too. I needed money for a lawyer because I knew Elena would try to destroy me. What about the email saying you didn't actually want custody of your son? Marcus shook his head sadly. That email was taken out of context. I was venting to my attorney. I was frustrated. But of course, I want to be part of Isaiah's life. He's my son. The court seemed to think otherwise. The court was biased. Elena's lawyer presented a one-sided version of events. I never got to defend myself properly. What about the affair with Brianna Collins? Marcus paused. This was the trap he had been waiting for. There was no affair. Janet's eyebrows rose. Brianna Collins herself said, Brianna Collins is lying. We were friends, colleagues, nothing more. Elena was paranoid and jealous. She saw conspiracy everywhere. So Brianna's interview was manufactured. Elena probably paid her off. Elena has enough money to buy anyone's story. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Marcus spun a tale of a controlling wife, a biased court, and a vindictive billionaire who had used her fortune to destroy an innocent man. He thought he had done well. He thought he had planted seeds of doubt. He had no idea that Elena was watching every word. In her penthouse, Elena sat in front of the television with Victor and Helen Park. He's good, Helen admitted. He's playing the victim card effectively. Some people will believe him. Let them believe, Elena said quietly. For now. What are you planning? Elena picked up her phone and dialed a number. Dr. Morrison. Yes, this is Elena Castellano. I need the results of that medical examination from 2 years ago. The fertility workup we did at the Atlanta Reproductive Center. Yes, I'll hold. Victor and Helen exchanged glances. What fertility workup? Helen asked. Elena didn't answer. She was listening to the voice on the other end of the phone. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Thank you, Dr. Morrison. Could you send those records to my attorney? Yes, Helen Park. Thank you. She hung up. Elena, Helen said carefully. What was that about? 2 years ago, Marcus and I went to a fertility clinic. We were trying to get pregnant and nothing was happening. They ran tests on both of us. And the results showed that Marcus had severe fertility issues. Very low count, very low motility. The doctor said natural conception would be extremely unlikely. Helen leaned forward. Are you saying Isaiah might not be his biological son? No. Elena's voice was steady. I'm saying the doctor told Marcus directly that his chances of fathering a child naturally were almost zero. Marcus heard that diagnosis. He sat in the office and listened to every word. And then you got pregnant. 6 months later. Victor's face was unreadable. Mrs. Castellano, what exactly are you planning to do with this information? Elena looked at the television, where Marcus's face was frozen in an expression of righteous indignation. Marcus just told the world that Isaiah is his son. He said he wants to be part of Isaiah's life. He said, I'm keeping him from his child. Yes. But 2 years ago, he was told he couldn't father children, and he never mentioned that diagnosis during the custody hearing. He never brought it up in any of his claims. Because it would undermine his case. Exactly. Elena stood up and walked to the window. Atlanta sparkled beneath her, a city of lights and possibilities. Marcus thinks he has biological claim to Isaiah. He thinks he can use that claim to threaten me forever. But what if I take that claim away? You're going to reveal the fertility diagnosis? I'm going to reveal that Marcus was told he couldn't have children, and I'm going to let the world draw their own conclusions about what that means for Isaiah's paternity. Helen's eyes widened. Elena, that's a nuclear option. Once you go public with that, there's no taking it back. I know. It will humiliate him completely. It will strip away the last thing he has, his identity as Isaiah's father. I know. And the press will tear him apart, again, even worse than before. Elena turned from the window. Her face was calm, but her eyes were burning. Marcus went on television tonight and called me a liar. He said I manufactured evidence. He said I paid off witnesses. He said I'm a paranoid, controlling woman who destroyed an innocent man. She walked toward the television and paused in front of Marcus's frozen face. Now, I'm going to show the world who's really lying. And I'm going to make sure he never threatens my son again. When? Tomorrow. I want a primetime interview. The biggest audience possible. Victor nodded slowly. I'll make the arrangements. Helen gathered her papers. I hope you know what you're doing, Elena. This is going to change everything. That's exactly the point. The interview was scheduled for 6 o'clock the following evening. Elena arrived at the television studio with Isaiah in her arms, Victor at her side, and the medical records in her briefcase. She was going to end this. Tonight. Once and for all. The studio lights were blinding. Elena sat across from Diane Mitchell, the most watched evening news anchor in America. 30 million people were expected to tune in. The network had promoted this interview for 48 hours straight. The billionaire heiress speaks, Elena Castellano's first exclusive interview. Diane leaned forward, her expression a carefully practiced blend of sympathy and curiosity. Elena, thank you for being here tonight. I know this has been an incredibly difficult time for you. Thank you for having me, Diane. I've been silent for too long. It's time people heard the truth. Let's start with the basics. 2 weeks ago, you were a stay-at-home mother recovering from a C-section. Today, you're one of the wealthiest women in America. How does that feel? Elena paused. She had practiced this answer with Victor a dozen times, but now, under the lights, the rehearsed words felt hollow. Honestly, it doesn't feel like anything. The money doesn't change who I am. It doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't heal the wound of being thrown out by the man I loved while I was still bleeding from surgery. Speaking of your husband, Marcus Thompson gave an interview last night claiming that you've manufactured evidence against him. He says the marriage was already falling apart and that he's been unfairly portrayed as a villain. I saw the interview. What's your response? Elena looked directly into the camera. Somewhere out there, Marcus was watching. She wanted him to see her face when she destroyed him. Marcus is a liar. He's been lying since the day we met, and tonight I'm going to prove it. Diane's eyebrows rose slightly. This was better television than she had expected. That's a strong claim. What evidence do you have? Before I show you the evidence, Diane, I need to give you some context. 2 years ago, Marcus and I were trying to have a baby. We had been trying for over a year with no success, so we went to a fertility clinic here in Atlanta, the Atlanta Reproductive Center. Go on. They ran tests on both of us, standard procedure, and the results came back with some difficult news. Elena reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Her hands were steady, her voice was calm, but inside her heart was pounding. The test showed that Marcus had severe fertility issues. His sperm count was extremely low. His motility was almost non-existent. The doctor told both of us sitting in that office together, that natural conception would be, quote, almost impossible, unquote. Diane's eyes widened. Are you saying? I'm saying that Marcus was told by a medical professional that he could not father children naturally. He heard that diagnosis. He sat in that room and listened to every word, and then he went home and pretended it never happened. But you did get pregnant. Isaiah was born 2 weeks ago. Yes, I got pregnant 6 months after that diagnosis. The studio went silent. Diane seemed to be processing the implications. Elena, are you suggesting that Isaiah isn't Marcus's biological son? Elena let the question hang in the air. She could feel 30 million people leaning toward their televisions. I'm not suggesting anything, Diane. I'm presenting facts. Marcus was told he couldn't have children. 6 months later, I was pregnant. Marcus never questioned the pregnancy. He never asked for a paternity test. He simply accepted Isaiah as his son because it suited his narrative. And what is that narrative? Control. Marcus wanted to control me through the baby. He wanted to use Isaiah as leverage to get my money. But he never stopped to consider whether the child he was claiming was actually his. Diane glanced at her producer off camera, receiving some signal Elena couldn't see. Elena, I have to ask you directly. Is Isaiah Marcus's biological son? Elena looked into the camera again. This was the moment. The nuclear option. I used a sperm donor, Diane. The words dropped like bombs. Elena could almost hear the collective gasp of 30 million viewers. After we received Marcus's diagnosis, I was devastated. I wanted a baby more than anything. Marcus didn't want to discuss options. He didn't want to consider donor sperm or IVF with assistance. He was too proud. His ego couldn't handle the idea that he wasn't capable of fathering a child. So what did you do? I went back to the clinic alone. I told them I wanted to try one more thing. I used a donor. Elena's voice cracked slightly. This was the part she hadn't practiced. This was real. I made the decision without telling Marcus. I know that was wrong. I know I should have been honest. But I loved him, Diane. Despite everything, I loved him. And I knew that if I told him the truth, if I forced him to confront his own limitations, it would destroy him. So I protected him. I let him believe he was the father. I carried that secret alone for almost 2 years. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. They were real tears. The weight of carrying this lie, even a lie she had constructed to protect a man who didn't deserve protection, had been crushing her. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was preserving his pride, keeping our family together. I thought if I just loved him enough, if I sacrificed enough, He would eventually become the man I needed him to be. But he didn't. No, he threw me out. He threw Isaiah out. He chose his mistress over his family. And the whole time he was calling Isaiah his son, he knew. He knew it was almost impossible for him to have fathered a child naturally. But he never questioned it, because questioning it would mean admitting his own weakness. Diane was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Elena, what you've just revealed is extraordinary. You've essentially told the world that you deceived your husband about the paternity of your child. Yes. Some people will say you were wrong to do that. Some people will say you're just as dishonest as Marcus. They might be right. Elena wiped her eyes. I'm not perfect, Diane. I made choices I'm not proud of. But every choice I made was to protect someone I loved. Marcus's choices were to protect himself at the expense of everyone else. That's the difference. What do you want people to take away from this interview? Elena turned to face the camera one final time. I want people to understand that Marcus Thompson has no claim to my son. He has no biological connection to Isaiah. He has no moral right to custody. For the past 2 weeks, he has been threatening to take my child using Isaiah as a bargaining chip to extort money from me. But Isaiah was never his to take. Her voice hardened. I also want Marcus to know that I'm done protecting him. I carried his secret for 2 years. I let him believe he was something he wasn't. I sacrificed my own integrity to preserve his ego. And in return, he threw me into the snow, called me worthless, and tried to steal my child. She leaned forward. That ends tonight. You have no power over me anymore, Marcus. You have no claim to my son. You have no leverage. You have nothing. Diane let the silence stretch for several seconds. Good television required moments of pause. One final question, Elena. Do you regret any of it? The secret, the marriage, any of it? Elena looked at the photo of Isaiah that sat on the small table beside her chair. Her son. Her miracle. The one good thing that had come from 4 years of pain. I regret trusting a man who didn't deserve it. I regret losing years of my life to someone who saw me as a means to an end. But I don't regret Isaiah. I don't regret becoming a mother. And I don't regret surviving. She smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was strength in it. I'm going to raise my son. I'm going to build something meaningful with the fortune my father left me. And I'm going to show Isaiah that his mother was a woman who fought for what mattered. And Marcus is going to have to live with who he is. That's punishment enough. The interview ended. Diane thanked Elena for her time. The cameras stopped rolling. The studio lights dimmed. But the damage was already done. Across Atlanta, in a dingy motel room with peeling wallpaper and a television that barely worked, Marcus Thompson sat frozen on the edge of his bed. The interview was still playing on the screen, the anchor now discussing the revelations with a panel of legal experts. But Marcus couldn't hear them. His ears were ringing. His vision was blurring. His entire world had just collapsed. She's lying, he whispered to no one. She has to be lying. But even as he said the words, he knew they weren't true. He remembered that day at the clinic. He remembered the doctor's face, the careful way he had explained the results, the pamphlets about donor options and IVF alternatives. He remembered leaving the office in silence, refusing to discuss it, telling Elena they would figure something out, and then never bringing it up again. He remembered being surprised when Elena announced she was pregnant. Surprised, but not suspicious. Because suspicion would have meant asking questions. And asking questions would have meant confronting the truth about his own body, his own limitations, his own failures. So, he had chosen to believe. He had chosen to accept Isaiah as his son, without a single doubt. Because the alternative was too painful. And now, Elena had exposed that choice to the entire world. His phone was buzzing constantly. Messages from numbers he didn't recognize. Reporters, probably. Maybe former colleagues who wanted to gloat. Maybe strangers who just wanted to tell him what a piece of garbage he was. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened Twitter. The trending topics hit him like a physical blow. Not his son was number 1. Sterile. Marcus was number 3. Elena was right was number 5. The comments were brutal. Screenshots of his face from the interview 2 nights ago when he had claimed Isaiah as his son were being shared with captions like, "This man really thought he was the father," and "The audacity of mediocre men." Medical experts were weighing in, explaining that while low sperm count didn't make conception completely impossible, it made natural conception extremely unlikely. Probability calculations were being shared. Statistics were being quoted, and underneath all of it, the same question repeated over and over. Why didn't he ask for a paternity test? Because he was too arrogant. Because he couldn't handle the idea that he might not be capable of fathering a child. Because his ego was more important than the truth. Marcus hurled his phone at the wall. It shattered against the cheap plaster, leaving a dent. "This isn't over," he said out loud. "This isn't over." But even he didn't believe it anymore. 3 days later, Marcus's attorney called. "I'm withdrawing from your case," Raymond Carter said, without preamble. "What? You can't do that. We're in the middle of—" "There is no middle, Mr. Thompson. There's nothing left. The custody petition is dead. The asset claim is dead. Your reputation is dead. And frankly, my representation of you is becoming a liability to my firm." "A liability? I'm paying you $200 an hour. You're paying me with frozen assets and bounced checks. As of this morning, you owe my firm $47,000 in unpaid fees." Marcus gripped the phone so hard his hand hurt. "I'll get you the money. Once this is resolved." "It is resolved, Mr. Thompson. You lost. Elena Castellano has no legal obligation to give you anything. Isaiah is not your biological son. The court has already issued a modified ruling based on the new evidence. You have no parental rights. You have no financial claims. You have nothing. I can contest the paternity. I can demand a DNA test. You can. And when the test confirms what Elena already told the world, you'll look even more pathetic than you do now. Is that what you want?" Marcus couldn't answer. "I'm sending you a final invoice," Carter continued. "You have 30 days to pay. After that, I'm turning the debt over to collections. Goodbye, Mr. Thompson." The line went dead. Marcus sat in the silence of his motel room, surrounded by the wreckage of his life. His career was gone. His marriage was gone. His son, the son he had abandoned in the snow, wasn't even his. His money was frozen. His reputation was destroyed. His lawyer had quit. He had nothing. For the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus Thompson felt something he had never felt before in his entire life. Despair. Real crushing, absolute despair. He had always believed he was special. He had always believed he was destined for greatness. He had clawed his way up from nothing, first in his family to get a college degree, first to get an MBA, first to break into corporate America. He had worked harder than anyone around him. He had sacrificed everything for success. And now it was all gone because of a woman he had thought was beneath him. Elena, the waitress who clipped coupons, the wife who gained weight during pregnancy, the burden he had discarded like trash. She had destroyed him. She had taken everything he had built and burned it to the ground. And the worst part, the part that kept him awake at night, the part that made him want to scream until his voice gave out, was that she had done it all legally, publicly, completely within the bounds of the system he had spent his entire career learning to manipulate. He couldn't even hate her properly, because on some level, buried deep beneath the rage and the humiliation, Marcus Thompson respected what she had done. She had played the game better than him. She had won. The days blurred together after that. Marcus stopped answering his phone. He stopped leaving the motel room. He survived on vending machine snacks and gas station coffee. He let his beard grow wild. He stopped showering. The motel manager came by once to ask about payment. Marcus gave him the last cash he had, $400 that had been hidden in his sock drawer. It bought him 2 more weeks. He spent those weeks watching Elena on television. She was everywhere now. Morning shows, evening news, magazine covers. The press had fallen in love with her story. The waitress who became a billionaire. The mother who protected her son. The woman who exposed a fraud. Every interview was the same. Elena spoke about her plans for the Castellano fortune. She was starting a foundation to help single mothers in crisis. She was funding shelters across the country. She was creating scholarships for women who had sacrificed their education for bad relationships. "I know what it feels like to have nothing," Elena said in one interview. "I know what it feels like to stand in the cold with a baby in your arms and nowhere to go. I want to make sure no woman ever has to feel that way again." The audience applauded. The host wiped away tears. Elena smiled graciously. Marcus wanted to throw something at the television, but he had already broken it with his phone 3 days ago. Instead, he sat in the darkness and listened to her voice through the cracked speaker. "My father built an empire of wealth," Elena was saying. "I want to build an empire of legacy. I want Isaiah to grow up knowing that his mother used her resources to make the world better, not just richer." The host asked about Marcus. Elena's expression didn't change. "Marcus made his choices. He has to live with them. I've moved on." Moved on. She had moved on. While Marcus rotted in a motel room counting the days until he was evicted, Elena Castellano had moved on. The unfairness of it was overwhelming. The rage was suffocating. But underneath it all, there was something else. Something Marcus didn't want to name. Guilt. He remembered the night he had thrown her out. He remembered her face, the desperation in her eyes, the blood on her gown. He remembered the way she had begged him to look at Isaiah. He had refused. He had turned away from his own son, a son who wasn't even his, and slammed the door. What kind of man did that Marcus had spent his whole life believing he was exceptional? But exceptional men didn't throw bleeding women into the snow. Exceptional men didn't abandon newborn babies. Exceptional men didn't cheat on their wives and steal their money and treat them like garbage. Marcus Thompson wasn't exceptional. He was ordinary, he was selfish, he was cruel, and now the whole world knew it. On the 14th day, Marcus made a decision. He was going to leave Atlanta. He was going to go somewhere nobody knew his name. He was going to start over. He packed what little he had into a duffel bag. He called a bus station and found a Greyhound heading to Ohio. $73 for a one-way ticket to Columbus. Columbus. A city where nobody cared about billionaire divorces or viral videos or Twitter trends. A city where Marcus Thompson could disappear. He walked out of the motel at dawn, duffel bag over his shoulder. The morning air was cold, but the snow had melted. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds. Marcus didn't look back. He walked to the bus station. He bought his ticket. He found a seat in the back of the bus, pulled his hood over his head, and closed his eyes. 12 hours later, he arrived in Columbus. He found a room in a boarding house on the outskirts of the city. $40 a week, shared bathroom, no questions asked. The landlord was an old woman named Mrs. Patterson, who didn't watch the news and didn't care about his past. "You look like you've been through something," she said when he handed her the first week's rent. "I have." "Well, whatever it was, it don't matter here. Just pay on time and don't cause trouble." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus took his room key and climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The room was small, barely bigger than a closet. A single bed, a tiny window, a radiator that clanked and hissed. But it was quiet. It was anonymous. It was invisible. For the first time in weeks, Marcus Thompson felt something like relief. He found a job 3 days later. It wasn't much. Night shift at a warehouse on the industrial side of the city. $16 an hour. No benefits, no questions about his background. The work was mind-numbing, lifting boxes and loading trucks for 8 hours straight. But it was honest work, physical work. Work that left him too exhausted to think about Elena or Isaiah or the life he had destroyed. His co-workers were mostly immigrants who didn't speak English. They didn't know who he was. They didn't care about his past. They just wanted to get through the shift and go home to their families. Marcus envied them. He worked. He slept. He ate cheap food from convenience stores. He avoided mirrors because he couldn't stand to look at himself. He avoided the internet because he couldn't stand to see what people were saying about him. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Marcus Thompson was disappearing. And somewhere in Atlanta, Elena Castellano was building an empire. She had kept her promise. The Castellano Foundation was operational within 60 days of her father's death. Shelters were funded. Scholarships were created. Support systems were established for single mothers across the Southeast. Elena worked 18-hour days. She learned the business from the ground up. She attended meetings, made decisions, signed documents. She was present for every major choice, every strategic pivot, every dollar spent. Victor watched her with something like awe. "Your father built this company over 40 years," he said one evening as they reviewed quarterly reports. "You've transformed it in 4 months. I had good teachers. You have good instincts. There's a difference." Elena smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in a long time. "How is Isaiah?" "Perfect. He's sleeping through the night now. The nanny says he's the calmest baby she's ever worked with. He has his mother's temperament. He has his mother's determination." Elena looked at a photograph of her son that sat on her desk. "I want him to grow up knowing that his mother built something meaningful, something that helps people, something that matters." "He will." Elena turned back to the reports. There was always more work to do, more decisions to make, more lives to change. But late at night, when the office was empty and the city was quiet, Elena allowed herself to think about Marcus. She had won. Completely. Totally. Absolutely. So why didn't it feel like victory? She thought about the man she had married, the man she had loved once, the man she had protected with lies and sacrifices. Where was he now? What was he doing? Was he suffering enough? Part of her wanted him to suffer forever. Part of her wanted him to feel every ounce of pain he had caused her. But another part, a smaller part that she didn't like to acknowledge, wondered if she had gone too far. She had destroyed him, publicly, completely. She had stripped away his career, his reputation, his identity as a father. Was that justice? Or was it revenge? And was there a difference? Elena didn't have answers. She wasn't sure she wanted them. All she knew was that she had survived. She had protected her son. She had built something meaningful from the ashes of her old life. And somewhere out there, Marcus Thompson was learning what it felt like to have nothing. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. 1 year later, the grand ballroom of the Castellano estate glittered with 1,000 points of light. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Tables draped in white linen held centerpieces of white roses and candles. 300 of Atlanta's most influential people filled the room, dressed in their finest glasses of champagne in hand. It was the inaugural gala for the Second Chance Foundation, Elena's organization dedicated to helping single mothers in crisis. The event had been sold out for months. The waiting list for tickets stretched into the hundreds. Elena stood on the private balcony overlooking the ballroom, watching the crowd below. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet that caught the light when she moved. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. Diamond earrings, part of her father's collection, sparkled at her ears. She looked like a queen surveying her kingdom, but inside she felt something else entirely. The glass door behind her slid open. Victor stepped onto the balcony, a tablet in one hand, 2 glasses of sparkling water in the other. "The donations are exceeding all projections," Victor said, handing her a glass. "We've raised enough tonight to fund 12 new shelters across the Southeast. The scholarship program is fully endowed for the next 20 years. "That's wonderful." "You don't sound wonderful." Elena took a sip of water. The bubbles were sharp against her tongue. "I'm tired, Victor. That's all." "You've been tired for a year. This is something else." Elena didn't answer. She looked out at the city lights, millions of glowing dots stretching toward the horizon. A year ago, she had been down there somewhere shivering on a bus stop bench, bleeding into the snow. Tonight, she owned the skyline. "Do we have the report?" she asked finally. Victor set down his tablet and reached into his jacket. He pulled out a thin folder and handed it to her. "It arrived this morning. I wasn't sure if you wanted to see it tonight." "I need to see it." Elena opened the folder. Inside was a single photograph and 2 pages of typed text. The photograph showed a man in a warehouse uniform loading boxes onto a truck. He was thinner than she remembered. His beard was unkempt. His shoulders were stooped. He looked 20 years older than his actual age. Marcus Thompson. "He's been in Columbus for 11 months, Victor reported. "He works the night shift at a distribution center, $16 an hour. He lives in a boarding house on the edge of the city. He has no social media presence, no friends that we can identify, no romantic relationships." "Does he know about tonight?" "Unknown. He doesn't appear to follow the news." Elena studied the photograph. The man in the picture bore little resemblance to the arrogant husband who had thrown her into the snow. That Marcus had been polished, confident, certain of his own superiority. This Marcus looked broken. "He's disappeared," Elena said quietly. "As completely as a person can disappear in the modern world, yes." Is he okay?" Victor paused. "Physically, he appears healthy. Mentally, it's difficult to say. He works, he sleeps, he keeps to himself. Whether that constitutes okay depends on your definition." Elena closed the folder. "There's something I need to tell you, Victor." "Yes, madam. Something I've never told anyone. Not Helen, not the doctors, not even myself most of the time." Victor waited. In 37 years of service to the Castellano family, he had learned that the most important conversations required patience. Elena walked to the edge of the balcony. She gripped the stone railing and looked out at the darkness beyond the lights. "The fertility diagnosis, the one I told the world about in that interview." "Yes." Marcus wasn't sterile. Victor went very still. "The doctor's report said he had low count, low motility. He said natural conception would be difficult. Almost impossible, he said, but not completely impossible." "Mrs. Castellano, I never used a donor, Victor." The words came out quiet, almost a whisper. "There was no clinic visit, no procedure. Isaiah was conceived naturally. Against all odds, against all probability, Marcus and I made a baby the old-fashioned way." The silence on the balcony was absolute. Even the noise from the ballroom seemed to fade away. "Isaiah is Marcus's biological son." Victor's face was unreadable. "You told the world otherwise." "I lied." "On national television?" "Yes." "To 30 million people?" "Yes." Victor set down his glass carefully. "Why?" Elena turned to face him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. "Because Marcus wanted to use Isaiah as a weapon. He wanted to hold my son hostage for money. He wanted to threaten custody battles and court cases for the rest of my life. As long as he believed he was Isaiah's father, he would never stop coming after us." "So you took away his belief?" "I convinced him that he had no biological claim to Isaiah. I convinced him that he had been sterile all along. I convinced him that his ego had blinded him to the obvious truth. And he believed it. He had no choice. The medical records supported the story. The probability supported the story. And deep down, Marcus always suspected there was something wrong with him. He just never wanted to face it." Victor was quiet for a long moment. "You weaponized his insecurity." "Yes." "You used his weakness against him." "Yes." "You lied to protect your son." Elena felt the tears finally spill over. "I lied to end it, Victor. I lied because I was tired of being afraid. I lied because Marcus would have used every legal trick, every court filing, every custody motion to torture me for decades. The only way to stop him was to sever the connection completely. By making him believe there was no connection to sever." by making him believe he had no rights, no claim, no power. Victor walked to stand beside her at the railing. He looked out at the city, his face thoughtful. "Your father," he said slowly, "was capable of many things. He built an empire through ruthlessness and calculation. He made enemies and destroyed rivals. But I don't think even he could have done what you did." Is that a compliment or a criticism? It's an observation. Victor turned to look at her. "You told a lie that will last forever. Marcus will never know that Isaiah is his son. He will live the rest of his life believing he was sterile, believing he was cheated, believing he was a victim of his own body." "I know. Is that justice or is it cruelty?" Elena wiped her eyes. "I don't know anymore. I thought I was protecting Isaiah. I thought I was protecting myself. But sometimes late at night, I wonder if I went too far." "Do you regret it?" Elena considered the question. She thought about the night in the snow. She thought about the blood on her gown. She thought about Marcus's face when he said, "Get out, take the bastard with you." She thought about Isaiah sleeping peacefully in the nursery upstairs, safe and loved and protected. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. I would do it again. I would do worse if I had to." "Then why are you crying?" "Because I wish I didn't have to. Because I wish I could have been the person I was before Marcus turned me into this. Because I miss the woman who believed in love and trust and second chances. That woman was thrown into the snow and left to die." "Yes, she was." Victor reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. It was an unusual gesture for him, intimate, fatherly. "Your father once told me something," Victor said. "He said that power is not about what you can do. It's about what you're willing to do. The people who hesitate, who second guess, who let their conscience paralyze them, those people lose. The people who act, who decide, who accept the consequences of their choices, those people win." "And which kind of person am I?" "You won, Mrs. Castellano, completely, permanently. Marcus Thompson will never threaten you or your son again. He will live out his days in obscurity, believing a lie, suffering a fate far worse than prison." Is that what I wanted? That's what you chose. The question is whether you can live with it. Elena looked at the photograph in the folder. Marcus's face tired and broken and defeated. "I can live with it," she said. "I have to." Victor nodded slowly. "Then that's all that matters." He gathered his tablet and turned toward the door. "The guests are expecting you to make a speech in 15 minutes. Shall I tell them you need more time?" "No." Elena straightened her shoulders. She wiped the last traces of tears from her face. "I'll be there." Victor paused at the door. "One more thing, madam." "Yes." "The investigators found something else in their report on Marcus. Something I didn't mention earlier." "What is it?" "He keeps a photograph in his room. It's the only personal item he has. A photograph of Isaiah taken from a newspaper clipping." Elena's breath caught. "He cut it out and framed it. He looks at it every night before he goes to sleep." Victor left the balcony. The glass door slid shut behind him. Elena stood alone in the darkness. The folder clutched in her hands, the weight of her choices pressing down on her shoulders. Marcus kept a photograph of Isaiah. The man who had thrown his son into the snow. The man who had called Isaiah a bastard. The man who had tried to use a child as leverage for money. That man kept a photograph of Isaiah by his bed. Did Marcus miss his son? Did he regret what he had done? Did he lie awake at night wondering what might have been if he had made different choices? Elena would never know. She could never ask, because if Marcus ever learned the truth, if he ever discovered that Isaiah was really his son, everything would start again. The lawsuits, the custody battles, the endless war. The lie had to hold. Forever. Elena tucked the folder into her clutch and walked back into the ballroom. The crowd parted for her as she made her way to the stage. 300 faces turned toward her. Cameras flashed. Applause rose like a wave. She climbed the steps to the podium. The applause faded. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Elena began. "1 year ago, I was standing in a snowstorm with my newborn son, with nothing but $500 and a broken heart. I didn't know if I would survive the night." She paused. The room was completely still. "Tonight I'm standing in front of you as the head of a foundation that has already helped over 2,000 women in crisis. We've funded shelters. We've created scholarships. We've provided legal aid and job training and childcare support." She looked out at the crowd. Some faces were familiar. Others were strangers. All of them were listening. "But I don't want to talk about numbers tonight. I want to talk about choices." Elena gripped the podium. "Every one of us is defined by the choices we make. When I was thrown into that snowstorm, I had a choice. I could have given up. I could have let despair consume me. I could have become a victim forever." Her voice grew stronger. "But I chose to fight. I chose to survive. I chose to build something meaningful from the wreckage of my old life. And tonight, I'm asking all of you to make the same choice." She looked directly into the cameras. "Somewhere out there right now, there is a woman standing in the cold with a baby in her arms and nowhere to go. She doesn't have a billionaire father waiting to rescue her. She doesn't have a fortune to fall back on. She has nothing but her own strength and her own will to survive." Elena's eyes were blazing. "I want to be there for that woman. I want to give her a second chance. Not because she deserves it more than anyone else, but because everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves the opportunity to rise from the ashes and build something new." She raised her glass. "So tonight, I ask you to join me. Donate, volunteer, spread the word. Help me build a world where no mother has to choose between her baby and a roof over her head." The applause was thunderous. The crowd rose to their feet. Cameras flashed from every angle. Elena smiled. It was a real smile this time. Tired, but genuine. She had built something meaningful. Something that would outlast her. Something that would help thousands of women she would never meet. That had to be enough. After the speech, after the photographs, after the endless handshakes and congratulations, Elena finally escaped to the nursery on the 3rd floor. Isaiah was awake. The night nurse had just finished feeding him and was about to put him back in his crib. "I'll take him," Elena said. The nurse handed over the baby and quietly left the room. Elena held her son against her chest. He was so much bigger than he had been a year ago, so much more alive. His eyes tracked her face. His tiny hand grasped her finger. "Your daddy threw you away," Elena whispered. "He looked at you and saw a burden. But I look at you and see the most important thing in the world." Isaiah made a soft sound somewhere between a cough and a laugh. "I did some things I'm not proud of, baby. I told lies that can never be untold. I hurt someone who probably deserved it, but maybe not as much as I gave him." She kissed his forehead. "But every choice I made was to protect you. Every lie I told was to keep you safe. And if I had to do it all again, I would, 1,000 times over." Isaiah yawned. His eyes were drooping. "Your grandfather built an empire of wealth. Your mother built an empire of lies. But you, Isaiah Castellano, you get to build something different, something honest, something true." She placed him gently in his crib. "You get to be better than both of us." Elena stood by the crib for a long time watching her son sleep. The city glittered outside the window. The gala continued downstairs. The foundation was funded. The future was secure. And somewhere in Ohio, in a cramped room above a warehouse, Marcus Thompson was looking at a photograph of a son he would never know was truly his. Elena had won. Completely. Permanently. Absolutely. But victory, she was learning, came with its own kind of weight. Its own kind of loneliness. Its own kind of cost. She had built a fortress around her son. She had protected him from every threat. She had ensured that Marcus could never hurt them again. But she had also ensured that Isaiah would grow up without a father. That Marcus would spend his life believing a lie. That the truth would be buried forever. Was that justice? Was that revenge? Was there a difference Elena didn't know? Maybe she would never know. All she knew was that she had survived. She had protected her son. She had built something meaningful from the ashes of her old life. And that would have to be enough. The sun was rising over Atlanta when Elena finally left the nursery. The gala guests had long since departed. The ballroom was empty. The house was quiet. She walked to her office and sat down at her father's desk. The desk that was now hers. The empire that was now hers. The legacy that was now hers. She opened the folder Victor had given her. She looked at the photograph of Marcus one last time. Then she fed it into the shredder. The machine whirred. The photograph disappeared. Marcus Thompson ceased to exist. Elena leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Outside the window, the city was waking up. Cars were moving. People were starting their days. The world was continuing to turn. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago. The waitress who clipped coupons. The wife who believed in love. The mother who had been thrown into the snow. That woman was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone harder. Someone colder. Someone who had learned that survival sometimes required sacrifice. That protection sometimes required lies. That love sometimes required cruelty. Elena Castellano, heir to an empire, founder of a legacy, protector of her son, and the keeper of a secret that would last forever. She opened her laptop and began reviewing the Foundation's morning reports. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But before she started, she allowed herself one final thought. Marcus had kicked her out to find a better life. And in doing so, he had handed her the keys to the kingdom. She had locked him outside the gates. And she had thrown away the key. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some stories end with redemption. Some stories end with the villain learning his lesson and becoming a better man. This was not one of those stories. This was a story about a woman who was thrown away like garbage and came back as a queen. This was a story about a man who had everything and lost it all because he couldn't see what was right in front of him. This was a story about choices and consequences, about power and revenge, about the lies we tell ourselves and the truths we bury forever. Elena Castellano survived the storm. Marcus Thompson did not. And somewhere in a nursery overlooking Atlanta, a little boy named Isaiah slept peacefully dreaming of a future his mother had killed to protect. That was the end. That was the only end that mattered.